When someone passes, where do they go? Gone forever, or can they show? What if you could find someone between to bridge the gap of those?
I'm Michele Livingston, and I've been a spiritual medium for the last 30 years, appearing on Fox News, New York.
Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Jarrett. Welcome back to Breaking News. To be a really interesting guest for the hour, Michele Livingston is a visionary counselor.
On stage with medium James Von Prague.
Did anybody smoke, Richard?
Yes.
I smell tremendous smoke even up here. Was that your father that smoked?
My father and my mom.
On ABC
There's
News.
Air, oxygen everywhere, you can't see it, but it's here. Same thing with the spirit realms. So even though it's in a beautiful invisible realm, I have the capacity to tap into it and actually see them. He says, thanks for the balloons. I have no idea what that means. Do you have your mother's ashes with you?
My brother and I had necklaces made with her ashes in them, and I just took it off the chain tonight and put it in my pocket because I was curious if it would come up, and it did.
From the east in Harrisburg, PA, to the west in Hollywood, CA, I'm the People's Medium.
Michele, what are you doing?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Tony?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. How you been? How was your holidays?
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. And back in the saddle.
Right?
Right. So I thought we'd go a little bit deeper. I've done about 150 podcasts with Tony. If you're just tuning in, watching for the first time, or listening for the first time, Tony's in Burbank, California, UBN, and I'm here in central Pennsylvania. And if you're watching on my fan page, it's Michele with one L. We have a lot of Michelles going on here today. Michele with one L, Livingston, comma, the People's Medium. You can see me there. We will have a couple guests on, so I hope you're watching, and I hope you're listening. The subject tonight is comas and what happens to a soul during a coma. Comas can be medically induced, or they can just happen spontaneously with brain injuries. But I want to converse about the different ways to approach this. One is through life support. So let me back up and removing life support, which is very traumatic for a family, as we know. A lot of families harbor guilt about it, even for years since they had to do that action. But a coma is basically a prolonged state of unconsciousness. The person, as we know, is unresponsive to any kind of stimulus. It could even be pain induced. They look like they're sleeping. They are basically in another zone, so to speak. The last sense that to be diminished is hearing. So when a person's in a coma, they can actually hear you in the hospital room. They can hear conversations, but of course they can't answer you. I did some research on comas, and they can last from a couple days to a few weeks, even up to a few years. When a person wakes up from a coma, they can be in a persistent vegetative state, or they can end up passing away. Those, in a coma are still with us, but their soul is coming and going. It is a similar case to dementia or Alzheimer, which I'm going to be addressing coming up on another podcast, and what happens to the soul in that state. But tonight, again, it's comas. There is a total loss of brain function. They actually appear dead to us, like I said, or sleeping. But believe it or not, there is a silver cord, and when we're born and take our first breath, the soul attaches to us. The umbilical cord's cut, but a silver cord goes from our navel to the midsection of our light body, the solar plexus of our soul. When we dream at night, the soul can leave the body and go into the astral world, and the cord stretches. If the cord snaps, we're not here anymore. We're up there. in the next realm, in the next dimension, which we call heaven. So again, with this type of situation, the soul really wants to be free. I really feel that we're on a timeline. I feel from 30 some years of doing this work that with God's will, we choose a timeline to come down here to learn soul lessons. The higher frequency is heaven. It's a higher, faster frequency. And that's where souls that we love reside. And so therefore, being in this state, they long to be released and they long to go. I had so many people write to me about this subject. Some were family members that had to remove life support. Some patients were had a living will. Some did not. And that was a tragic thing for the family to have to do. There were on the flip side, other people who actually were in a coma, went to the light, went to heaven, came back, woke up, and they returned to talk about it. And that's fascinating too. So we're going to do both sides tonight. I want to share just a little something that a lady named Sharon wrote to me, God bless her. And she's on my Facebook page. I have a friend page and I have a fan page. And I posted this, and there was a lot of response from both sides. So I just want to share with you. She said, be my guest. I really don't want to come on, but you may read whatever you want to about it. I'm still trying to get over the guilt. She had identical twin daughters, Heather and Andrian. And she says she loved them, of course, very much. Heather was only 27 years old when she had gastric bypass surgery. The surgeons took too much of her stomach, which is pretty unbelievable. They accidentally removed too much of her stomach, and she became very weak and malnourished. They did a lot of blood work on Heather, and nothing came out. They could not find, why she was so weak. But she shut down. Her whole body shut down. And she didn't go into just one coma. She went into 4 comas at the age of 27. So I can imagine what Sharon felt, being by her side, holding her hand, trying to communicate with her, wondering what to do, wondering if she's going to come out of this or if she's going to go into another coma. So during her 4th coma, Heather got awake for just a few minutes, and she looked at her mother and she whispered, "Please let me go. Please." She couldn't move, but she mouthed the words and whispered them to her mother. "I really don't want to be here anymore. Mom, please let me go." So Sharon thought about it, and she thought, that's my daughter's wish. Because of course, at 27, like I said, you don't have a living will. So with a lot of courage, Sharon pulled the plug, so to speak, and her daughter went to heaven. She says she still struggles with the fact of taking her daughter's life to a point, but her dad just passed last April, and she writes here that she knows that Heather has met up with her grandpa in heaven. That is one example of ending a life without a living will. Another lady wrote to me and said, well, my dad didn't have a living will, and he was in a coma for about 2.5 weeks. But I knew in my heart of hearts that he would not want to be in this condition. Even if he woke up, he wouldn't want to be a burden on anybody. And therefore, I, in my heart of hearts, knew that. I ended his life. And she has no remorse. She doesn't have any regrets. So there, like I said, there's 2 sides to this. Now, my book, which is up on the screen, Living in the Afterlife, many of you have. And there's a chapter on comatose and beyond. There were 33 souls briefly that came to me over a period of 4 years, and they told me what heaven was like and what they do in heaven. One of the souls that came through was a very dear friend of mine that actually, I knew her since the 1990s. Her name was Carol. And Carol was a psychiatric nurse, a lovely lady. She was a healer. She helped people. She was a certified hypnotherapist, a Reiki master, and that was her mission, to come down to earth to heal and help people, and just from the bottom of her heart. So around 2012, my friend Carol was having surgery and went into a spontaneous coma during surgery. She did have a living will, and her daughters called me. They know that I can talk to the heavenly realms, and they were curious to know what their mother had to say while she was in the state of a coma. And could I possibly receive any information from Carol in that state? So I went to the hospital. I had everyone clear out of the room. I had a pen and paper with me, and I touched Carol's hand. It was pale and white and very cold. But I talked to her because I knew that she could hear me. And I said, Carol, I want you to give me some information for your girls. She always called her daughters her girls. And they so much longed for this before they ended her life support. So I happened to look up at the ceiling, and I kid you not, there was Carol. There was her soul, or her light body, up on the hospital room ceiling looking down at me. And I grabbed my pen, and I received from her in that state about 2 to 3 pages of information. One thing she jokingly said, because she had a good sense of humor, tell my girls I just got my hair done to go to heaven. And they knew it was her because they told me she always got her hair done every week and that she had to have it done before surgery. So in my book, Living in the Afterlife, I just want to share some information now that she's up there in heaven, and she's been up there for some time, what she said from a nursing background and a healing background about the state of being comatose. She said to me in the book, I was ready, Michele, to leave my body. I was tired physically, and I was losing hope. I heard you speak to me and saw you from an aerial view when I was on the ceiling. Now, again, the silver cord attached, and many metaphysical, spiritual people have studied this kind of thing, and they know that the cord stretches. So Carol was able not only to go on the ceiling above me, but she could float down the hall, she said, and come back, which was very interesting. She said she was able to communicate with another comatose patient in that wing telepathically to each other's soul. She says, basically, I didn't want to lie there and be nothing and do nothing. I think people should let their family members die with dignity. And that's the word I want to stress. You're not killing them. You're giving them a gift to let them soar free. And you're giving them a sense of dignity, just like the lady that wrote to me and said her dad would not want to be in that condition. And she thought of him over her own grief and was able to release him. And that took courage, a lot of courage, as I said. Carol also said, I believe that keeping someone artificially alive is like trying to shove a newborn baby back into the womb and not cut the umbilical cord. So when we're born into this world, of course, we're born physically, but we're also reborn into the next realm of heaven, which we call the fourth dimension. So imagine trying to push a baby back, and also imagine another good analogy is the butterfly. The cocoon represents the physical body, and the butterfly is the soul that flies free. Now, how many of you out there would want to take a delicate butterfly and try to push it inside back into its cocoon? I don't think anybody'd really want to do that. But to keep someone on artificial life support is basically saying, you're going to stay right here. And families, they're in a state of shock, first of all. They're confused. They're not sure what to do. So as I've stated, whether it's a living will or not, it's up to the family to have a meeting to say, what would be best for our loved one? We know we're going to grieve and we know we're going to miss them, but they'll still communicate with us, hopefully in some way. In different podcasts, I've shared 10 different ways that souls communicate from heaven. And so, if you've watched my podcasts, that the spirit is very much alive, that the soul is energy. You can never destroy energy. Energy just takes different forms. And so, therefore, I thought that was wonderful the way Carol worded that, to let them go and let them have their dignity, which is a real gift. She also told me, and this is a pretty long chapter, and I won't get into all of it, but she also told me that some souls can choose a comatose state to teach their family soul lessons. Now, here's a new spin on it. If the family needs to learn faith, or if they need to have a deeper sense of courage, a person unconsciously or soul-wise, not consciously, might choose to go into a coma to give that family a chance to learn certain soul lessons. And that's fascinating when you really think about it. So it does take a knowing in your heart of what to do. And it does take thinking about your loved one and how they so much want to be let go. And some of them do come back and some of them do wake up, which we're going to address, during this podcast. Some people have gone to heaven and heard it's not your time, go back. But I wanted to start off with the idea of having to remove assisted life support. I actually have a guest on. Going to get a drink of water. Her name is Kathy, and her mother was Carol. She's a beautiful girl. So, Tony, if we are able through Zoom to bring Miss Kathy on, I hope so.
There she is. Miss Kathy, you're on with Michelle.
Hi.
Kathy? Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Hello.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. And thank you for coming on this evening. Your mother was a lovely lady, and she helped so many people. And I feel she's happy that we're addressing this subject tonight. So I just wanted to ask you something, Kathy. How did you feel prior to having me come in and getting information from your mother? Were you a little bit apprehensive about ending life support, or were you at peace with that even before I contacted her?
I honestly, probably 2 days after she had the surgery and was in the coma, I kind of had the feeling that she had chosen to go.
Yes.
And you kind of confirmed for me. But I really did believe that she told me that she was ready.
Yeah.
And you helped with that.
Well, it's the first time I ever was able to communicate or asked to communicate with someone that was actually in a coma. So it was a revelation for me, Kathy. It really was. And about a week or two ago, you did share with me some of the signs that your mother, Carol, has given you from heaven. So would you like to share with us?
Oh, yes. She knows that I'm just kind of doing my own thing. So she slams me with big signs every now and then. And a few years after she passed, I went to the cemetery, and it had snowed, and it's over an hour away from her home. So I drove up there, and it's on the top of a mountain, and it's very quiet and peaceful. And I pulled in, and I went to her stone, and I'm standing there, and a deer walks within, 100 feet of me. And this deer is limping, and my mom had a bad foot, and for a long, long time. And it just stood there and looked at me, and then just walked away. And it was a sign, and then
Yes.
yeah,
And your mother liked nature. She loved nature.
he loved nature and music, and that's where she gets me.
And she would probably have influenced the doe or the deer to come to you to say hello. And the foot connection is what really made it for you.
When I realized that, oh my gosh, Mom had a bad foot, and so does the deer. So,
and it was right at the cemetery. Now you had another story about a song or something that was connecting you with your mother.
Well, when I left the cemetery that day, the song Mother and Child Reunion came on. And that just hit me too. Did you want me to tell you about the other sign that I had?
Very briefly, we have a couple more guests, but it's so interesting because I did love your mother. Go ahead.
I was running, training for a 5K, and the street light went out, and immediately a song came on that meant a lot to both of us. And so those kind of things happen to me now and then, and it really feels good.
And Kathy, the wonderful thing about you, I know you're an artist and I know you're spiritual. You were able to connect the dots. You were able to think, okay, this is a deer. My mother loved nature, but also the foot connection. You were able to connect the dots with two different songs. So I say to people, if you knew how much they love you and how much they want to say hello from heaven, to look for signs, whether it's a penny or whether it's a feather, whatever it is, they're saying hello. And so by you being so open, can you imagine what joy that brought your mother to let you know that she's in the love and light of a higher realm and that she dearly loves you, my dear. She dearly loves you. So I'm so happy to have you. I'm so happy to have worked with you in the past. I wish you all the best, and thank you for taking the time to come on because I know you're busy. Thank you, sweetheart. God bless. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so there is a beautiful lady. That's Kathy. That is like I said, the daughter of my friend Carol, and her sister, of course, who's not on this evening, but both of them. The girls asked me to come in and talk to their mother. I like the idea of signs. So whether you have gone through pulling the plug, so to speak, whether you have someone now that's in a coma and that maybe won't wake up or maybe will wake up to tell you what heaven is like, look for these things, write them down, look for the signs. There are no coincidences. There are no accidents. I have another brief guest. We're going to flip this around, who actually, God bless her, went to heaven. She was young. She was only, I'll give you a little bit of a background of her. We've never met, but she was 35 and she had chronic Crohn's disease, and she went into septic shock. Her name is Christine, and then that led to a coma. She was in a coma, I don't know how long, she'll tell us that. But I brought her on because she was one of the ones who actually left the body, went to another realm, and actually saw a friend of hers from high school. So can we bring Christine on?
We sure can. Here we go. Christine, you're live with Michelle.
Hi, Christine.
Okay. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for coming on. I just gave a little...
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I gave a little synopsis about your background. You had the Crohn's disease at 35. You went into septic shock, which led...
After surgery, yeah.
That led to a coma. Now, was this a medically induced or was this just a coma that happened, honey?
My understanding is overall it was medically induced because my body went into the septic shock and they weren't able to figure out what was wrong with me.
So how long were you in this state, Christine?
Almost 2.5 months.
2.5 months.
Yeah, it was at a point where they did tell my dad to figure out how to get my body back to New York because it was just a matter of days. It wasn't, they didn't think it was going to turn out well.
So you are a medical miracle in a way. And
Some like to say that.
I would say you are a beautiful girl. I also want to say that you emailed me. We've never met. There were many scenarios that you gave me, but the one that stood out to me is the boyfriend you had. And how old were you? You were in high school, correct?
Yeah, he died at 16.
You hadn't thought of him, you hadn't seen him, and you're now 35 years old. And tell us what happened when you went into a crowded room up there.
Right. It was like a marketplace. And I mean, he's always been on the back of my head because I felt his life was taken obviously too soon. I felt our relationship was just budding, like we weren't even like out in public or anything. And we were waiting because my mother was actually his teacher, which is another story. But yeah, so I always had this hope of seeing him in the future. But yeah, I was in this marketplace, if you will. It was just a crowd of people, and like I didn't know where to go. And all of a sudden, like out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. So I actually started to try to like go towards him, and he kept on like going the other way. And finally, you know, I'm calling him, and he basically turned around. He's like, "You need to go back." And I was like, "But I want to talk to you." And he goes like, "You need to go back."
Mm-hmm.
It just stuck with me because I was like, all I want to do is like talk to you, but okay, I'll go back, you know. But,
and you also said that his birthday, is it today or was it yesterday?
I said, when you were talking about today, yesterday is his birthday. Mm-hmm.
How old would he be today, Christine?
He would be 46 today.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So in a way, we're honoring your 16-year-old boyfriend. Happy birthday up there, dear.
Like you were just talking about signs, and I'm like, I don't really find signs, which sometimes I'm like, I guess not. But to me, when you pick this date, I was like, maybe that's a sign.
Yes, it is definitely a sign. And I think it's wonderful because you were in the astral plane. You were actually up in the realm where souls are that have crossed. And it was not your soul contracted time, my dear, to stay up there. You were supposed to be on Earth, have children, and live your life. So your boyfriend at the time, who was 16, had soul contracted a younger time to exit the Earth plane. We know soul-wise our date to come in, and we know approximately within 1 or 2 days, unconsciously, soul-wise, when we're going to exit. So that story is amazing to me. It was not your time, and he let you know that. He didn't want you following him around the heavenly realms. And you really don't need signs, but the idea is that you had that experience. Do you feel that you're changed because of that? Because you actually saw him and had, you knew you were up there in the astral plane? Has it changed you at all? Do you feel, let's put it this way, fortunate to have come back? Or did you kind of want to stay up there with him?
I think in my youth when I was 16, and I think that was, in my head, I wanted to meet him actually when I was 36. I was like, let me have 20 years on life, have a child. My son was 2.5. And I think at that point he was saying, you know what, you need to go back to your son, which
Yes.
then I'm glad to be here for
Yes.
my son. I can't imagine him with somebody else at all. So yes, I needed to come back. So that was the right push.
Isn't that amazing? Well, I also want to thank you. You're beautiful, by the way. It's the first time we've met. For sharing this story, for sharing this, Christine. It's wonderful. And you're not the only one. Many people have said they've gone up there and their relatives and friends say, no, it's not your time, go back down. So how old is your boy?
I'm glad to be back down.
How old is your son now, Christine?
He's 13 now. He's 13. He'll be 14 in the summer.
Well, you're very fortunate to not only come back, to wake up, to have a lovely family now. And that was all meant to be, darling. That was God's will.
Yes.
So I want to say thank you for coming on and telling us your story. And you have a good evening. I appreciate it, Christine.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye-bye, honey. Take care.
Bye.
All right, Michelle, that was great.
We're going to briefly have one more guest, and I know that there are people that said they're going to call in. We'll open the phone lines towards the end. I'm on for an hour. I want to bring one more guest on, but the phone number, what's the phone number, Tony?
The for the guest now, the vigil, or the
to call in after
sorry.
this.
323-649-8268, and that's 323-649-8268. Give us a call, get in queue to talk to Michelle Hughes.
Yeah, and if you have a story to share, whether it's you that woke up from a coma, or a loved one did, or if you had to do the act, or really it's a tragic thing, to end life support, even though you're gifting them with going to heaven and freeing them with dignity, let us know how you feel about that. And I hope some of you that are listening and some of you that are watching honestly will release some guilt to know that what you did was meant to be, and it was for that person's highest good, whatever it was. So we have another guest. I'm just going to give you a quick little rundown of this one. Her name's Michelle with one L. Here we go with the more Michelles. We've never met, of course, but she wrote to me and basically said that she had an upper respiratory infection. She thought it was bronchitis. She was walking around and went into the hospital emergency, and they said, girl, you're going to die. We got to put you immediately into a medically induced coma so that your body can heal, so that you can get your strength back. And it was no ifs, ands, or buts. Her name's Michelle. We're going to bring her on. She has quite a story to tell, because just like Christine, she didn't stay in her body. She went up there and she was told certain things. So can we bring our next guest, Michelle?
We sure can.
Tony.
Here we go. Michelle, you're on with Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
Hi.
I know that, darling, you were on mute during this. And what I did was share your upper respiratory infection and how you went in for a checkup. You thought it was bronchitis. And they immediately, to put you into the medically induced coma, you were in there for how many days in the coma? 10 days, I think you had mentioned.
Yeah, it was actually 2 days after I went into the ER that they put me in the coma, but it was, a long 2 days.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, you shared something very interesting, and it was very detailed. It was very lucid. And it was almost like it happened this morning. So you left your body and you saw a building, you saw a structure, you told me.
Yeah.
And it was almost like somebody was narrating everything that was going on. So could you briefly share that with us?
Well, there was this mansion that I'm going to call it a mansion. It was a big home on top of a hill. And there was a lake behind it with all these beautiful flowers. And I'm inside the front door of this building, and I can hear this voice, like you said, a narration. And they're talking about this gentleman that fell in love with this woman, and he built her this home and gave her this garden. And I'm like, I wake up and I hear this story in my head, and I'm thinking, it was all so weird. It was like, I felt so comfortable there. It was very
Yes.
familiar.
It was familiar. I do remember you saying that. You even said that there was a lovely lake behind the mansion. The flowers were pink.
Yes.
And, I don't think God would.
Hundreds of flowers. I mean, it was like a whole courtyard of these pink flowers. Apparently, they were her favorite, whoever she was.
Well, maybe it was you, my dear, because I was just going to say, I don't believe that we'd have one chance to perfect a lifetime. And there have been cases where people have gone to previous lifetimes while in a coma. And so I wouldn't be at all surprised if the gentleman would have been your boyfriend. This is just maybe a guess, but this was your home with your lake, and you visited there. And what's amazing about it is you felt so at home.
Yeah.
But it didn't begin and end there.
No.
One of your loved ones got a little bit feisty with you because you weren't supposed to stay in heaven. So do you want to tell us that story briefly?
It wasn't, most people talk about a light or a long hall or something. Mine was basically a dark hall, I'm going to say. I walked through these double doors, and there was my aunt and my sister, who had both passed. And my sister didn't say anything, but she looked at me, shaking her head. My aunt was the one who gave me the what for, because I didn't quit smoking like I promised her. And she basically said, no, you need to go. And next thing you know, like I said to you, it seemed like a matter of hours that I woke up from my coma, but it was really a whole week.
Wow.
And yeah, it seemed like it just happened, but it was.
And so here we are. We go from one scenario very lucidly to another one where two of your loved ones, your sister and your aunt, were they were kind of in a room, you said, and the aunt was feisty. I guess she was feisty on earth.
Yes.
And wanted you to quit smoking, but you didn't quit smoking, so you had the respiratory infection. And as we jokingly said, she gave you more than what for, but we're not going to say this on the air.
No, you're not.
She really let you have it, honey.
Yes, she did.
From what you wrote to me, which I get a kick out of.
Yes.
And have you changed? I asked Christine this. Do you feel more in tune with yourself? It's almost like a near-death experience. It's almost like, well, it's definitely an out-of-body experience, but we could call it even a near-death experience. And when people have those, they come back, they either feel different or feel more sensitive. So let me ask you, Michele, do you feel any different from all this?
The sensitivity issue with me is off the chart. I've always been a little bit sensitive to people. When I come in a room, I can tell when people are having bad days, but now it's like way off the charts, way off. I cry at commercials.
Oh, so what's happened to you is you're an empath probably, and that's been enhanced since you've gone to the light and come back down here. It's so interesting.
Yes.
And I wish you well. We're gonna take a commercial break.
Okay.
We're also going to open the phone lines, but right before we went on air, you said that who now, just today, just an hour or two ago, went into a coma.
My aunt that sat with me when I was in a coma is now in a coma, yes.
Is that medically induced, Michele?
Yeah, she had a heart attack.
Well, you're in my prayers, my dear, this evening. And I know that you have a lot of phone calls to make and people to talk to this evening.
I wanted to share my story though, because people need to realize there's somewhere beyond here, and it's a comforting place. I almost didn't want to come back, you know what I mean? But I felt obviously I was meant to. So
yes,
they call me a medical miracle also. So I do blessings.
Well, you are a blessing, and you're a blessing for taking the time to come on this evening, darling. So I wish you well. I will send some prayers up for your aunt, and I hope our paths cross sometime. You have a good evening, honey. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Michele. Well, there we go. We've had some we could have tons of guests because I had so much response from this particular subject. What I'd like to do, Tony, we have a little commercial, don't we?
You sure do.
And then we're going to open up the phone lines. Now, I'd like to keep it on the topic, please. If you, again, I'll briefly say this, have been in a coma, you woke up, you remember anything, if you've had to end life support with a loved one, do you still feel guilty? Do you feel like you gave them a gift? So call us. We're going to go now to a quick commercial, and we'll be right back. So hang in there. Don't leave us.
If you enjoy the Michele Livingston Show and want to see her in person, check out her next live seminar.
So here we go. If you can work with me, close your eyes. We're going to take 8 deep breaths, and we're going to start.
Have you recently lost a loved one?
Who lost a husband recently? I had to take a deep breath with him. I feel it was fairly quick.
Could you be the next one to get a reading?
I think I'm with you, sweetie. There's a name like Bree. They're showing me cheese. That's the new one. They showed me Bree cheese and her daughter's name Bree. See how this works?
This seminar will provide an experience that will truly enhance your understanding of the other dimensions.
When we get over there, we train to help 1 or 2 people that are on the earth plane, and we train to be their guides or their helpers.
And confirm that you
There's a dad figure coming through here.
are never alone.
Did you enjoy it? Oh, thank you so much.
We are back.
I hope I get to meet and greet some of you. The seminar, February 9th, is sold out. And this one is in May, beginning of May, in the Lebanon, Pennsylvania area. And it's starting to fill. So go on my website. It's michellelivingston.com. You can sign up for my newsletter so that you know all the events that are coming up and all the podcasts that are coming up and the subjects. So I will be back on the end of, towards the end of February. My husband is celebrating a birthday, and his date, the date of his birthday is this year is 2/20/2020.
Wow.
So we're going to go to Belize and Cozumel and the Yucatan Peninsula, and we're going to have a good time. We both need a vacation. It's been a long winter here, a long, cold winter. So my point is we have Valentine's Day that we're leaving. We'll be back towards the end of February, but I'll probably be on for a special the last Wednesday in February. And Tony, my co-host, has always been so supportive. God bless him. I love you, Tony. Thank you so much for helping me with these. And I hope you feel a little better out there.
I do. Thank you.
The subject will be, a topic will be announced, the subject. And this is why I encourage you on my homepage to sign up for my newsletter. So I think we have some time now.
We do.
For any calls, feel free to call in. Again, the number is what? 323.
323-649-8268. 323-649-8268. But the lines are already full. But if if you can get through, great. Hopefully, if not, next time Michelle will be waiting. But we have tons of people, and I believe a lot of people have questions about your topic tonight.
Okay.
And the first one is also named Michelle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. Another Michelle. All right. Michelle, you are live on the air with Michelle.
Great.
Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to our podcast this evening. Did you know someone in a coma? Have you been in a coma? What would you like to share?
My mother was in a coma. She was in a medically induced coma.
Oh, did she come out of it, Michelle?
She did. She did. It took a couple days.
But go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, no,
I just
it was weird
wanted to know if there was any stories that she told you.
Okay.
We're on a delay, so I have to talk slow. I'm not used to talking slow.
That's okay. I know. I was like, what?
Did your mother have anything to share with you, Michelle?
She did. It was funny because it was like 2 days after she had come out, and we just started chatting, and she goes, well, I knew it wasn't my time. And I said, well, why? She said, because I didn't recognize anybody that was there. So it was a big room, and there were a lot of people milling around, but she didn't recognize one face.
Mm-hmm. And that could have been her soul group in heaven, that they weren't with her on earth this lifetime. But we all have soul groups, Michelle, in heaven. And some of our soul groups are up to 5,000 to 10,000 souls. And we come back with them again and again. But did she see any light? Was she drawn to a light or anything?
She was drawn to it, but at the same time, like when she was going towards the light, she said, it just didn't feel right. Like I wasn't ready to go. And because she didn't recognize the people, she went away from the light. But they were there, like, she goes, yeah, that didn't feel right.
Perfect, because it wasn't her time to make transition. Now, is she still with you now on Earth?
Yes, she is. She's had a heck of a year because she just fell, but other than that, she's doing fine.
Well, you're very blessed, Michele, that she woke up and that she had this story to tell you and that it wasn't her time. So you're going to enjoy, hopefully, many more years with your mother. And I so appreciate you taking the time to call in and share that story. I really do. And I hope you watch more podcasts. The topics are varied, my dear.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michele. Have a good evening.
Thanks. You too.
I say evening, but in California, what time is it out there in the West, Tony? It's like
late afternoon. It's 4:45. So we're almost evening.
And you're getting ready for dinner.
That's right. That's right.
Out there. Got to get your appetite up. You know, your mama would say that to you.
Don't worry, I always have an appetite.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Any other? Do we have any questions in?
Oh yes,
my
we have another
Facebook page.
Well, I'll take another call, then I'll look at the Facebook page. But we have Catherine talking about taking her mother off of life support. So. Would you like to take that one?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, here we go. Catherine, you're on the air with Michele Livingston.
Hello, Catherine.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for calling in. And what's your story?
Okay. I had to take my mom off life support, and I had spoken to you a couple times about dimes. So after, when she was on life support yet, I looked at her arm and I found a dime and a nickel on her arm, underneath her arm. And I was like, why is it like that? And my dad's like, I don't know. And I put her arm back down and then kind of made it realize that it had to do with a 5 and dime store that my grandfather owned. So over the time, we found dimes throughout, you know, after she passed away. But my question about when she passed was, I was in the room, and as soon as she passed, it was like her soul went through me, because all my life just flashed through my body. And I became stronger and more peaceful, and I felt strength that I never felt before.
That is an amazing story. And let me back up and just say that your grandfather had a good sense of humor. If he was passed and he put the pennies and dimes, the dime stores signs under her arm, that is unbelievable. The other thing is, I feel, Catherine, you and your mother, of course, were very connected. You were almost best friends and soul sisters. So as you gifted her with dignity by taking her off life support, she also gifted you by letting you feel inner peace with this action and letting you have new strength. So it was a two-way street with this scenario here, right? She gave back to you, my dear.
She was a very wonderful woman and a very caring person. And everybody that knows me and knows her or knew her would say, you're just like your mom.
That's right.
And it's just the feeling that I got, it was just the strangest thing. It was almost like I was going to pass out when I felt this. Almost, I think I was 35 or 36 when she passed away. And it was just like my whole life flashed in front of me. But ever since that moment, I've felt strength. This woman always had strength. She was the rock of the family. And I just felt inner peace, strength. And, you know, it's hard to explain. I'm sure you understand it, but
I understand it. And I think it's wonderful that you shared that. And it's sustained inner peace. It's sustained feeling strong, right? It hasn't dissipated. or has it, Catherine?
Right. No.
Well, then
She'll
your
always
mother
be
loved
there.
you so much to gift you with a part of her when she left this earth plane and went to heaven. And I just absolutely love that story. I think it's a exchange of love. I think you should write it down because it's very interesting, my dear.
Thank you. When she was on life support, she had died from diverticulitis, which was a total surprise. We thought she might have passed away one day from a heart disease or something. But when she passed away, I was by her side every day that she was in that bed. Even if it was for 15 minutes, I was there morning, noon, and night, just holding her hand.
And you honored her. And she returned that gratitude with the heart of gratitude. So I thank you, my darling, for calling in, for sharing your story. It was a wonderful story, Catherine. And
thank you.
Take care, and you have a wonderful 2020. I hope we can talk sometime.
We will. All right.
God bless.
So
God bless, honey.
Okay, Michelle, I have in the chat room, I have Lori that said, my son was in a coma on 2 different occasions. I'm so interested, and you may have covered this, but I'm so interested in what happens to their souls while in a coma.
Okay. While in a coma, the soul actually can come and go. And we said this at the beginning of the podcast, that there is a cord. I don't know if she was listening, but there's a cord. It's an invisible silver cord from our navel to the solar plexus of our soul or light body. It stretches. So someone in a coma is just not within their body. They're coming and they're going. They can go travel down the hospital hall. They can go up to the ceiling. They can watch us from an aerial view, come into the room. And as I stated earlier, the last sense to be diminished is hearing. So while in a coma, your son could definitely hear you. They cannot respond, of course, but they hear whole conversations. And I hope that helps you. Now, did she say her soul came out of the coma, or just ask that one question, Tony?
Sorry, that one more time?
Did she say her soul, her son actually came out of the coma? Or is it just...
It sounds like he came out of the coma, yes.
Good, good. And she should ask him also if he experienced anything while in that comatose state.
Well, before we if you don't mind, before we take the next caller, real quick, I think I told you before, my grandfather back in the 60s had a near-death, meaning he was in a coma, went to the light, saw his mother. His mother said, it's not your time. And he came back and remember, he went to an open field. He didn't go to a big place of heaven, but maybe that was heaven for him. But I just found that interesting.
Now, this was your mother's father?
My dad's
father's father?
Mm-hmm.
And so he would have seen your great-grandmother, his mother, right?
Yeah, he saw his mother, my great-grandmother. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that fascinating?
And I always tell people, this is before the books and the TV shows. So, back then, seeing the light was not common, at least talked about common.
and you're from Kansas. Was he from Kansas?
Oh, yeah.
So, he's not making that up.
No, not at all.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I never knew that. Of course, we never got into the subject before,
right,
Tony.
That's true. But thank you for
thank you, dear. So,
right.
Let's take a caller if there is one.
Yeah, of course. I think her name's Jen. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead. Jen, you're on the air with Michele Livingston.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello, dear. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Perfect. So what's your question? Do you have a story to tell about a coma, or did you have to end life support, Jen, for someone?
My aunt had to make the decision to end life support for my cousin, and she's always struggled with wondering if it was the right decision or not, because it took my cousin a very long time to let go. I was in the room with her, and they said it would only take minutes, and it took more like an hour. So we were all wondering maybe it was the wrong choice.
No, it's not the wrong choice. Sometimes people last for an hour or two because the body's starting to shut down the different organs. But if you were listening earlier, Jen, this is a gift that you give someone to let go. They really don't want to be in a state, a vegetative state. They don't want to be a burden, most of them, on their family. They want to let their family have freedom as well. And so please tell whoever was in the room or whoever has guilt to please release the guilt, because they did what was meant to be. It takes courage, as I said, Jen, to do that. But thank you for sharing that story. And would you please pass along to those that were in the room that what they did was right, and that they're in God's hands, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Jen. Thank you for sharing. Take care.
You too.
Any more comments, Tony?
I'm looking here. So, I know.
Well, Tony has to do my fan page because I can't see my fan page. This is something else. And then figure out who's calling from where.
Right.
And my earplug is stubborn tonight. Heck with it.
Well, this one actually I've heard several times, even on my show, and other people have talked about this. Kimmy said, my boyfriend experienced being in a coma, and he seen himself laying in the hospital bed, and it was on the ceiling. Is that when the soul is leaving, or is that just, what is that?
That's when the soul's coming and going.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I said, my friend Carol, when I went in to talk to her, I looked up and she was on the ceiling. And they can actually, like I said, float up and down the hallways in hospitals. So the only time the cord is severed is when we remove the life support system. Mm-hmm. That's when the cord is severed. They may not pass away immediately. You know, I'm not a medical nurse, but the organs have to shut down in a certain way. Right. It takes them some time. But the podcast really was for two things: to let those family members know or friends know that had to, whether to end life support, whether the person had a living will or whether they didn't. They did that. They did what they needed to do. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And for those that woke up from a coma, it was not your time. Your timeline was not up. It was not your time to join those in heaven. And I wanted to do both sides to show you what it's like from a perspective of being in a coma and what it's like for a precious family to have to go through this, to have to end a life. So I hope that everyone watching or listening gleaned something, let me put it that way, from this podcast on comas.
Well, it's a great subject because everybody, eventually, if they haven't, will experience it in some way. So, it's great that you give, some advice or even preparedness for something that might come.
It's very common. It's a very common situation that happens. And actually, it's more common than I realized until I posted it. And people had to take their sons off life support. There were brain injuries. And another thing I found interesting is one lady wrote to me and said her son woke up from a coma and was speaking fluent Spanish.
Oh, wow.
And he never even studied Spanish. So where did that come from? Right. Which is fascinating. And you could almost write a book on this. It's just so amazing, Tony. But I want to thank you for being so supportive of my podcast and for sharing the story about your grandfather in the big field. I think that's beautiful. Wonderful.
You. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
And as I said before, we have to check out now. Tony has to get dinner.
That's right. My husband
say I'll be back the end of February. If there's a subject you'd like me to cover, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer, whether it's bullying, there's so many subjects that we could go deeper with from a spiritual perspective. Write to me and let me know what you'd like me to address for you. So it was my pleasure, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Whether you watched it or heard it in the radio, God bless all of you. And I'm going to leave with my statement that I always use. Please always be kind.
Mm-hmm. Bye, everybody.
See you later.
If you enjoy the Michele Livingston Show and want to see her in person, check out her next live seminar.
So here we go. If you can work with me, close your eyes. We're going to take 8 deep breaths, and we're going to start.
Have you recently lost a loved one?
Who lost a husband recently? I had to take a deep breath with him. I feel it was fairly quick.
Could you be the next one to get a reading?
I think I'm with you, sweetie. There's a name like Bree. Bree. They're showing me cheese. That's the new one. They showed me Bree cheese and her daughter's name Bree. See how this works?
This seminar will provide an experience that will truly enhance your understanding of the other dimensions.
When we get over there, we train to help 1 or 2 people that are on the earth plane, and we train to be their guides or their helpers.
And confirm that you
There's a dad figure coming through here.
are never alone.
Did you enjoy it?